Hello, welcome back to my hip hop album rankings. I am going to be looking at this episode at the Mobb Deep themselves. Havoc and Prodigy, Queensbridge is Mobb Deep. Um, in looking at these albums, in comparison to previous listings I've done where the artists have still kind of been active in some capacity, um, with the passing of Prodigy 3 years ago, posthumous stuff aside, this is likely to be the entire collection, so I can look over these knowing that this will likely be the only listing of albums, so I don't need to necessarily look back over again to re-add things to them. I mean, it is possible they could release a posthumous album or something like that, but in terms of official albums released while living, this is the collection. So, without further ado, let's get to it. There's 8 to look at in total. So, we'll start with number 8. Also, with these sorts of videos, I'm sure you notice that quite often it will be the debut album that is the number one. Quite often artists, start really strong with their debut and then kind of fail to recapture the magic the further on they go. You see these patterns quite often with album rankings. With this collection, I'm actually going to start with the debut, Juvenile Hell. Brilliant title, my favourite Mobb Deep title. Unfortunately, not my favourite Mobb Deep album. Only one released on 4th and Broadway in April 1993, so they were still very young at this time, with teenagers and reached their 20s yet. And it does kind of show on the project where they're still trying to find their feet on it, discover their voice, and see there's still elements on it, particularly on the cover, where they're trying to establish their more hardcore nature that they become known for as an influential East Coast duo. With the carrying of the scythes, I believe they are. I should certainly hope they're not meant to be sickles, considering Prodigy's ailment. That would be quite inappropriate. But yeah, it's kind of demo-y, so there's not a lot on here that's particularly memorable. It's not particularly easy to find online either. It doesn't appear to be on any streaming services, so a lot of people probably aren't aware of this album in terms of the Mobb Deep discography. It's fine as an opening stepping stone, but help from the likes of Large Professor and DJ Premier don't really take it up too far. It is just a demo basically, and so quite a pale showing of what would later become their signature style and sound. So that's number 8. Number 7, we are moving further towards the end of the career with Blood Money, 2016. You can see how much I pay for these things. 2006, under G Unit Interscope Records. This was the only album they released under G Unit. I'm freezing again. Why do I keep doing that? Thank you. And so a lot of the feel of it was a kind of paint by numbers G Unit album. It's fairly difficult to tell some of the songs apart from any of the G Unit songs that were released around this kind of time. It's only the fact that they have Mobb Deep on them. The album is basically just Mobb Deep with money, which has its ups and downs. Hearing the collaborations with the G Unit members are generally quite fun. Seeing them feature Lloyd Banks, Young Buck, Tony Yayo. 50 Cent is on there several times. I don't believe he was needed as many times as that. He does appear on a few of the highlights tracks though. One of the main ones being Pearly Gates, which is mostly notable for the majority of Prodigy's verse, even on the explicit version being cut out due to some anti-religious material on there. But it works well as a track, and it's kind of a different style of song and topic from a lot of their catalogue. Bonus tracks include Have a Party and Out of Control remix, both featuring 50 Cent, Nate Dogg on Have a Party, which do help boost the album a bit, even though they are bonus tracks that were released before the album. And I suppose they're not necessarily Mobb Deep songs, they're 50 Cent songs, but they are really good songs in my opinion. They're better collaborations, and that's kind of what helps pick the album up a bit. And maybe cheating, they're bonus tracks, but still, Put Them in Their Place is a good opening single. It's one of the songs on there that does feel like a proper Mobb Deep song, so at least they managed to maintain that essence for the lead single. Other than that, it's not too much to say about it, really, which is a shame. But it's a fine album. It certainly feels more of a Mobb Deep project than the debut did, so there's that in its favour. So next, I'm going to go Infamy. Yes, I do have it in for it. No, I mean, a lot of people did when it was released. So this was the end of 2001. The final album released under the at the time the Sony Loud Epic label. This was released after there were attacks, mainly Prodigy, on Jay-Z's takeover, and there was a feeling that with this album it affected them and they'd have lost their touch a bit with bringing this album out, that they were trying to become more mainstream and sacrificing their hardcore tendencies due to that, which isn't necessarily the case. Yes, there are obvious commercial tracks on here, the most notable one being Hey Love with 112, but at least they were trying something different on there, because otherwise, the rest of the album largely is the hardcore signature Mobb Deep style. Unfortunately, by this point, it kind of got a bit tired and lazy. You can tell from the titles, simply Bounce, Clap. Neither of them are kids' nursery rhymes. Kill That Fella, My Gat Spitting, Hurt Fellas. So the more commercial leanings did kind of help it a little bit in that aspect. Scott Storch is a notable addition to the album who helps breathe life into it, particularly towards the end with songs like Live Foul, I Won't Fall, There I Go Again with Ron Isley. The first few tracks, Pray For Me with Little Mo and Get Away, are fine intro songs. Other than that, there's not really much else apart from with the most notable song on the album, The Learning, Burn, with Noid, which has become notable as a freestyle beat now, just because of how hard-hitting it is. Easily the strongest beat on the album. People may know it for Black Thoughts, Funk Master Flex freestyle released a couple of years ago. I say a lot of other people have used it as a freestyle beat because of just how hard it hits as a freestyle beat. I guess it's easy to flow over because of that. Um, so that's definitely a highlight. Other than that, is kind of just there. The signature style is on the album, but again, it was kind of fallen down by this point. Kind of ironic for an album that's got the song "I Won't Fall" on it. So, number five. I'm just pulling this up on my phone. I'm afraid I haven't got the official copy, but the infamous Mobb Deep. This was the final album that has been released to date, 2014, released after a bit of a gap with some personal issues between the two of them, Prodigy going to jail and a temporary breakup, all this kind of thing. So, in a way, this kind of helps re-establish their dominance on a lot of the album, even if it was only that sort of temporary re-establishment. And it's also more reflective on than you get on a lot of other Mobb Deep albums. Pretty much every other Mobb Deep album was kind of every song felt in the moment. It's about where they were at that moment, or just brief touchings on their upbringings and street stories from that. This album focuses in a lot of ways on themselves retrospectively, looking at their careers and how much of influence they've had on the game. Songs such as Timeless, Lifetime, Legendary with Bun B and GCJ. Other collaborations include Snoop Dogg, Lox, Busta Rhymes, Nas is on there from a few tracks on the end which are added from the Black Cocaine EP, which was released a few years beforehand. So while a mainstream set of collaborators, possibly, they all fit well and they work in the sense of that kind of legendary status they're establishing on the album. Not a lot of it is aside from these moments. The rest of the songs are kind of a bit, play by number. The production is kind of split between Havoc, Illmind, Boy Wonders on there, Alchemist on there a few times, of course, as well. And none of the production is necessarily groundbreaking, but for what they had already established, it doesn't matter as much. It's more about the overall feel of the album. Also, the second disc with it is a look at the infamous, which we'll get onto a lot later, and looking at demo versions of songs that made the album, songs that didn't make the album, freestyles and interviews they were doing around that time to help promote the album, lyrics on freestyles and other demo songs that would make other songs that did make the album. So in that aspect, it's interesting just to see the process in a way of what would end up becoming, their well-regarded album. A bit of a spoiler for the ending, but hey, I think you knew it was going to happen. So with these two together, it makes for a coherent project. This is also quite a difficult one to find online. It's not on streaming services. It's difficult to find on online shops. I don't know, because I suppose it wasn't. It's kind of a bit more of an independent release, even though it has the Stop Freezing You Arsehole, even though it has the Sony Red distribution. It was still kind of underwhelming in terms of chart performance. So I don't know if that has an effect on it, or it's the infamous sessions. Be able to license those properly or something like that. But because they were able to use some of that later on, I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, it's a really good album overall. So if you can find it, please check it out. Before Murder Music. So this was released in August 1999. It was kind of prime Mobb Deep time. The style had been really well established by this point. It's their highest charting album, I believe the best selling album. So yeah, really peak Mobb Deep. Um, and so in that regard, you kind of know what to expect from a lot of it. So there's a lot that you may not necessarily be able to distinguish apart from other releases. Um, it helps introduce Alchemist to the Mobb Deep universe. He appears a couple of times to help with the production, which is something. Towards the end, the album kind of gets a bit lighter, I suppose, with tracks like USA Right Then, It's Mine with Nas, were kind of more mainstream, I suppose, sounding songs. Lift the mood up of it a bit. Other than that, going through songs such, if you make your way through songs like Let a Ho Be a Ho, it seems to carry on the tradition Havoc tends to have, or just putting solo songs on there about him trying to get his leg over and it leading to some sort of problems. Um, Appearances from 8 Ball, Lil C's, Cool G Rap, which is an astonishing collaboration between a really good legendary lyricist and Mobb Deep. The most notable thing on here really is Quiet Storm, both that and the remix with Lil Kim on there. Both versions are really, really strong. The original maybe that bit better just because it focuses entirely on Prodigy. Um, but still a really menacing yet thumping beat. One of the strongest songs they've made in terms of a beat and an overall sound. So largely for that is the reason why I feel Murder Music has to be as high as that. Number 3. I'm afraid I have to go to my phone again because I also do not have. I'm not sure why I didn't get this. I must have just missed it at the time. I have the physical copy of it. If anyone is able to get me physical copies of these albums, then obviously it'll help video. I can also redo these videos with the albums. Then I'll give you a fan tour if you do. I'm going America's Nightmare. It was June 2004 on Jive, and the only album they released on Jive. This is between the end of their Sony deal and then moving to G Unit. As a way of sort of re-establishing themselves again after the disappointment of Infamy. I guess some people felt that this wasn't. It was notable at the time for being released on Jive, who at the time were kind of known for Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, pop artists. Even though a lot of their history was filled with hip hop, Mobb Deep were kind of the only hip hop artists on there at the time. So I guess that kind of either made you feel like they'd sold out to a major company, or they were trying to be hardcore on a company that didn't appreciate hardcore music. I feel it's a strong album overall. It's more concise than an album like Murder Music or Infamy, which are quite long albums. The production is sort of split between Havoc and more outside producers, which does kind of help the album by this stage because again, the Mobb Deep sound and style had kind of been driven quite heavily. So so getting some outside producers kind of gave it a bit more of a variety. So you get Kanye West on there, who's producing some of his very typical Kanye West 2004 type soul songs. Red Spider's on there. Little John appears to give them a crunk sounding song, which works well on the album. It doesn't stray too far away from what they usually bring to a song, so it doesn't feel too out of place on there. Alchemist helps produce a lot of the highlights on the album. It kind of really feels like he comes to his own as a affiliate producer on here, giving the album a bit more of a soulful sound rather than just the dark, gritty Mobb Deep sound. So for songs like Win or Lose, When You Hear That, and the lead single Got It Twisted, both that and the remix with Twister, which take the Thomas Dolby She Blind Me With Science sample and really make it into an eerie club banger, and again used for freestyles. Other appearances come from Jadakiss, Nate Dogg, Noise appears on all the other Mobb Deep albums, appears again. Is very always kind of felt more like a third part to Mobb Deep than some of the other affiliate artists, the infamous Mob, who've appeared before, who don't necessarily bring as much as Noid kind of does. He kind of feels more in place as another affiliate artist. So there's that. Yeah, a strong album overall. I feel one of their more varied albums, which is why I feel it kind of ranks that high. Number 2, Hell on Earth. So, yeah, I mean, Hell on Earth and The Infamous do kind of feel very much as one in a lot of aspects, as they really established their grimy hardcore sound, their overall feeling of paranoia. The main difference between Hell on Earth and The Infamous really is just production wise. The production on Hell on Earth is so much richer and atmospheric, and really just kind of surrounds you, encapsulates that eerie, haunting sound that they've been cultivating all this time, using vulture sounds for the track Nighttime Vultures, making cinematic sort of sounds with the track Give It Up Fast. Nas just begins with a plane landing and discussing making a story of getting off the plane and making a deal. The right to the end with Apostle's Warning, just Prodigy on his own, just really delivering that aggressive, haunting sound. In fact, probably the softest song on the album, ironically, is the title track Hell on Earth. It's the only song on the album that doesn't give the overall feeling of Hell on Earth, but it's a welcome break on the album. Other tracks include Drop a Gem on them, a response to Tupac, who unfortunately passed away by the time it got released. They kept it on there still, and I mean it does still serve a purpose as a really strong, aggressive track. Method Man appears on there, Raekwon appears, Nas and Noid was spoke about. So even though the sound can feel a bit samey from time to time, the power of it can't be denied. It's a really, really strong production. Alone is one of the strongest albums by a hip hop artist. So commendable for that. So that means then we have to go number one, of course, the infamous. It was going to have to be the infamous, wasn't it? So while the infamous may lack somewhat in overall atmosphere, it still brings a more condensed version of that, a more street guttural sound, a very jazzy sound at times, with Q-Tip helping with the production. Um, but the overall sense of street life, paranoia, survival, all those themes run throughout the album and just feel very real, like they're being lived in the moment, probably because a lot of the things were being lived in the moment. Um, Prodigy and Havoc both sound really, really cohesive, on almost at like the same person at times. Um, Bringing in guests such as familiar faces like Nas, Raekwon, Ghostface, Big Noid makes several appearances. Again, kind of establishing himself as kind of like the third part of Mobb Deep to great effect. Overall, just we like classic tracks. Um, Shook Ones Part Two, Survival of the Fierce, Pie Over, um, Eye for an Eye, Temperature Rising, looking at people in friends of theirs in prison, and just how what happened, what actions happened to get them there, and who may be responsible for them getting there. Um, yeah, the way that songs such as the Grave Prelude leads into the track Cradle to the Grave. Drink Away the Pain, which is a sort of a clever collaboration with Q-Tip, using drink alcohol and clothing as kind of using women as a metaphor for them, as like they're in love with these things. Um, so the topic wise, it goes through a lot of different things, even though it is all very much established in that New York street area. I say the sounds of them, particularly for Prodigy, who I mean did notably slow down on the Infamy and later albums. Whereas on those albums is sort of slower and calmer. On this in particular, he's hungry, he's aggressive, he's scared at times. He's again just I keep going back to the word paranoia, but I mean it just really feels so paranoid and claustrophobic at times. It is one of the greatest albums in hip hop to have been created and been released, and really helped establish Mobb Deep as a formidable duo. And yeah, I mean, you it is an album that you need to listen to if you want to have any real respect for East Coast hip hop and the its influence on later hip hop. Because I mean, particularly when you think that there's a lot of violent stuff on there, but it still feels very much like it's not sort of glorified violence. It's just violence because that was literally all that was surrounding them at the time. Them and the people that they were with, all they had to deal with was violence. So it's not glorified. It's just factual. Which is why it still holds really well against a lot of later similar styles of album. So yeah, that is my Mobb Deep discography ranking. Hope you enjoyed it. Take this ranking home and think it through, or the next ranking I write might be about you.